Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And as I tell you each week, my goal is just to bring you exciting discussions and meaningful conversations with my colleagues who are doing tremendous things in the world. It's giving you a chance to listen in and to understand what it takes, what it costs for us as Black folks, Black professionals, Black thought leaders to navigate this country at this time, and particularly predominantly white or non-Black spaces. My guests today include Reverend Adam Edgerly, who's been a lead pastor of a church in Los Angeles since 2003, but has recently taken on a new position, the Covenant World Relief and Development Director. And I'm really proud and excited about that. And I'm sure we'll get into some of this as well. He also owns a business that's called Culture Consultants, and he's led workshops across 5 continents. He's on the board of trustees with Biola University. He's got a bachelor's and a master's in intercultural studies, which included field study in leadership and language in Mali, West Africa. He also has an MBA from Emory University. My second guest is Dr. Efrem Smith. He's an African-American pastor of a multi-ethnic church co-pastor, Bayside Church, Midtown. He's also the co-owner of an LLC that's called Influential. And this brother is a preacher's preacher, speaker, consultant, thought leader, author as well. And he's spoken on many subjects, including leadership, multi-ethnic issues, and the development of Christian and faith communities. He's considered an advocate in urban ministry and specializes also in reaching out to the marginalized. He studied at St. John's University, Luther Theological Seminary, and just recently received his doctorate from Fuller Theological Seminary. Gentlemen, my brothers, my colleagues, welcome to Black Like Me.
Man, an honor to be with you. Yeah, man, this is awesome. You know, I need to thank Adam Edgerly because I would not be an entrepreneurial leader and a faith leader if it wasn't for a conversation in a hotel sports bar where he pushed me to think beyond where I was at the time. So,
wow.
Adam has played a significant role, as well as you, Dr. G, in who I am.
Man, listen.
Since we're kind of giving credit here, Efrem was my bishop here in the Pacific Southwest, and got me through some really tough times in ministry. In the pastorate, there's a lot of challenges, and I remember calling on him not just as a friend, but actually as like a pastor to pastors. So always good to be with you. And Alex, like we were talking before the show, just we need to spend more time together. There's certain people that energize
Definitely.
me, and a whole lot of people that drain me. So being with you, brothers, I'm already energized.
Man, that's so good. Listen, we're going to jump into some very interesting conversations. Although 3 of us are pastors, I want us to really talk with with us having wearing other hats. But before I get into that, I open up each segment with something that's called Black Icebreakers. Efrem, you from the Twin Cities, so you definitely know what Black Ice is. And so instead of having regular icebreakers, they're Black Icebreakers. Don't worry, don't use your black card. We're not going to call you into the local NAACP office. But I just got a couple of questions I want to ask you all because it is intriguing for my non-Black listeners to understand the cultural ties and understanding that Black people have, whether we're from the East Coast, the West Coast, the South, the Midwest. So I'll just ask you both just a couple of questions. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on them. Grits or cream of wheat?
Really? Grits? Wow, what kind of question? I should let Adam answer first. I'm sorry. But
it depends on the day, man. I mean, I can go for some just regular grits, cheese grits, even yellow grits. But I am one who I think is sacrilege to put sugar in your grits. I'm gonna just come with that. But I'll eat some cream of wheat too. But I gotta put the cinnamon and the sugar in the cream of wheat.
See, Efrem, that's why I have to ask. Now, I'm a sugar in my grits guy, but I also
Me
put my
too.
scrambled eggs and break up my
Oh.
sausage and then put my toast over it. So it's really a grit bowl when I make it. Efrem, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. The last year, especially, I've been beat up for putting pictures of grits with sugar and butter. I mean, you know, my mom's from Alabama and my dad's from Louisiana. So on my dad's side, I mean, in Louisiana, it's pepper, eggs, cheese in your grits.
Right.
It's the Louisiana thing. But my mom's from Alabama, so influenced by her, you know, I've always been a sugar and butter guy when it
Yeah, I'm
comes
with
to
you.
grits. But I get beat up by a lot of people for doing that.
Yeah, man, they do. Don't let them judge you, man. You're on the right side. Hey, do either of you know what it means to split the pole? Was that used in your communities growing up?
Never heard the term.
Really?
Yeah, yes.
Adam,
So
Adam, did you grow up in California?
I grew up, yes, in the Bay Area.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I forgot.
Yeah.
I know you live in California now. So Efrem, for our listeners, what is it to split the pole? Because it's not a very positive thing, is it, Efrem?
no, well, split the pole for me was, so I learned the hard way when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, when my mom and my younger brother and my dad went around the right side of a pole, and I just decided to walk around the left side of the pole. And my mama grabbed me and slapped me upside the head and made me walk back around
Because it's bad luck.
the pole. She said, "Don't be bringing no bad luck in our house."
And that pole can be a street sign. It can be a street light. That pole could be a tree.
Yeah, yes.
But you're supposed to pass on the same.
And I saw Adam's face. He just got revelation. He knows what split the pole is.
Got you. And people might have called it different things.
I've never heard the term before, but I've seen it. I've seen the effort to stay together.
To pull people back. Man, some of my white friends who listen to the show and hear me say this, they will purposely try to walk around, you know, either a bike rack or something just to kind of watch me do something. So again, this is what I'm about to describe next. We might have called it different things, but like where I grew up here in Wisconsin, I was born in Chicago, lived about 6 years, but grew up in Madison. Syllable spankings, and that's when your mother, your dad, usually was a female, would give you a lecture like, "Didn't I tell your black narrow tail not to?" I'm just curious, is that just in my household? Did y'all get any of those sort of speech syllable spankings? Does that make any sense to y'all?
Didn't everybody? I didn't know that was a.
I think.
Yeah, I thought every parent did that.
Yeah, you know, I used to jokingly say, here's the difference between an urban black house and a suburban non-black house. is the difference between how a child says no to their mom. You know, in the suburbs, it's "No, mommy." In the urban, it's "No, mommy, no."
Wait, like
No,
Penny,
mommy.
like Penny on Good Times. "No, mama, no, mama." Remember when Janet Jackson's mama was chipped? Like, she
Oh
had
my
the iron.
gosh.
"No, mama, no, mama." I'm not laughing at domestic violence, but I'm just saying you made me think about that.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I don't think I wasn't tortured as a kid. I was just disciplined for a testimony.
I love it. You know, since we're on that subject, Efrem, let me ask you this. Growing up, have you ever told mommy, "Get out of my room, mommy"? Which audience, I wish y'all could see this man's face.
The fact that I'm alive today proves that I never said that.
Because my white friends, some of my white friends could say that. They could say, "Mommy, I hate you," or "Mommy, no," or like you said, or "Mommy, get out of my room." I was like, "Oh," and y'all still got teeth. Efrem still hasn't even answered. He just standing.
No, I was just thinking, I'm 51 years old. I wouldn't tell my mama to get out of her room today.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Just a couple more of these, you all. Just a couple. Okay. Again, we know these things, but so many of my listeners are white. And again, they're intrigued that we have these cultural norms or experiences that across America we've held together. So when food is so good, it makes you want to slap who? Like something's really good. Say, "This food is so good, it makes you want to slap." Who's that person?
Your mama.
Yeah, your mama.
Yeah. Listen, now I'm going to ask you as black brothers this question because I ask my white brothers and I get a different answer. Eli's giving me different answers from other people. What do white people mean when they say frickin' A? First of all, is that cussing? Did I just cuss? When I said, And Efrem, you from Minnesota, so I'm going to need you to leave. You upper Midwest. When I know that's about to go down. When a white brother says, freaking A, I know some chairs about to start flying. I don't know what freaking A, does that A mean ass? I don't understand freaking, I don't understand. What does freaking A mean to you?
Freaking A to me means all the Black people should exit stage left.
It is an explicative. It's a sign of extreme anger and frustration.
Sorry. He said all the Black people should leave the room. I'm sorry, Adam, please finish. I forgot Efrem was a comedian. I'm sorry, Adam. What you say? It is.
No, that's it. That's it. That's all I have to say about that.
Oh my gosh. Oh my.
You ever seen the scene in Color Purple when when I can't remember when Squeak says to Sophia, Harpo, my man, you just a big black.
You just a
and the band starts packing up their stuff. That's what you should do when you hear freaking A.
Oh my God.
You should just say good night, y'all.
Oh Lord.
And just start packing up your stuff.
Y'all listen, I just want to do a conversation with a panel just to answer these. I don't have enough time to ask you as Black men, do we use washcloths? Do you know what a butt rag is? Did your family used to eat Argo starch? Because again, sometimes my wife friends just look at me like, what's a washcloth? Don't you just shed a bar of soap? And so anyway, just I don't have time to go through all of these things, but it's just really fun. It's just, man, this is just really, really funny. I know you both have been asked this because you're just sharp, but in your life, have you been called in a complimentary fashion articulate?
I've heard that term. Yes, it has been used.
Mm.
Yes, I have. And it's only been one particular group of people that have said that to me.
Who, pray tell, is the group of people, or what?
Yeah, so I've only been called articulate by white people.
Mm. Remember that book that Vernon Jordan wrote? Remember he was a special counsel to President Clinton, and the book was called Vernon Can Read. This man was in law school, working at a country club, and was reading his law books in between his shifts. And one of the patrons of the country club said, well, look, Vernon can read. Not even knowing that this man was in law school. I think when people find out sometimes that we can put some sentences together and maybe even write a few, articulate is one of the highest compliments that group will give us. But to many Black people, that's it's it's an insult, man. Listen, bro, thank you all for doing that. I love doing this. And let me tell you, one of my friends who's African-American history professor here at Wisconsin stresses that slavery and systemic racism did not destroy Black people because destroyed people don't have culture. And the fact that there are things that we eat similarly or we experience similarly is important to explain that this is what held us together. It was through our play cousins and the makeshift families that we put together. It helped us to be strong and to sustain ourselves. And so when we have conversations, we've known each other for decades. We've never had conversations about whether or not we're articulate or if you got syllable spankings or if your grandmama used to put plastic on the furniture in the front room. But when we hold those things in common, it reminds me of the beauty and the strength of our culture. And again, I don't know how coast to coast we hold and know those things, even if we call them something different, but it just speaks to the strength of Black culture and it's how it sustains us. And so I'm just always intrigued by how funny these conversations are and how much we actually have in common. Brothers, as we jump into conversation just about a number of things, patriotism, what's happening in the country today. I'd love to talk about Judas and the Black Messiah. I had a chance to watch that since our last discussion, but I realized we are all fathers of young women, that we are all fathers of daughters. Adam, I know we are. Efrem, Adam and I probably waited until we got married, so you might have other kids out there, Efrem, because you're a Kappa. But I'm just assuming, at least of the children we know about, that we all just have daughters. And so I just love the idea, Efrem, I'm messing with you. I just love the idea of us getting a chance to talk about how we think about life, how we try to shape our daughters for life, our view of the world and our vision for them. So I just hope that for like the next 40 minutes, we can just have a discussion as Black men who are trying to do the best we can to be a part of the solution while still standing our ground and raising strong Black daughters and maintaining our sanity and how we take friendly fire from folks who we thought should be on our side, and how we work all of that together and hold all of that intention so that we can still be effective and leaders, in our work. So I just want us to have that as a framework. And so I guess I just start off by just asking, when did the two of you get the race talk? We often talk about the male talk, the sex talk, the protection talk, whatever it is. But do you remember when someone tried to give you the race talk as a kid, whether it's the police or your teacher or your friends? But do you remember when someone first tried to help you navigate what it was like to be a Black person in America? And then you could just jump in any order, brothers.
Yeah, I think for me that was a series of talks, and context is everything. But my parents so often described just the need to carry yourself in a certain way when you're in public, to always be respectful and just kind of coaching on how to stay out of trouble, I guess. We were always told also how to respond to police officers. You're very polite and you're and deferent and respectful of law enforcement. But as time went by, there were other conversations. I remember Miss Williams in elementary school pulling me aside at recess to just talk to me about what she saw in me. Part of the beauty of that conversation was she spoke life into me, just talking about my potential in that. But she also explained that I would need to be very disciplined and that I would have additional challenges from being Black. And then I found a letter from my father that he never sent me. It was when my dad passed away, it was among his things, there was a letter that he had written, and it was describing how I needed to behave in college. And I remember that we had the conversation. He never sent that particular letter, but I'm kind of glad I have it in writing. And essentially he was saying, hey, have fun, son, but just understand that this is different for you than it is for the white kids in college. The stakes are higher. And in some cases, you can do the same things that another student might do, and it'll be taken differently, and you'll be treated differently. And they might not get the grades, and they can still work around that. But this is serious for you, and so you need to take it seriously. And I always took those things to heart when he said them to me. But to find them in writing was kind of a memorial of that coaching that we received on how to navigate the space that we live in as Black men.
Man, that's powerful. I wish I'd gotten a letter like that. Efrem, how about you, brother?
Briefly, I can think of 3 talks. I mean, like Adam said, I mean, it's a series of talks over time, but the first talk I can remember is when there were summers when my mother and father would take myself and my younger brother, Tremaine, back down south to visit our relatives. And so I remember a drive from Minnesota to Monroe, Louisiana. And during that drive, my parents saying, look, it's going to be different where we're going. And they would say, make sure you say, when you don't look white people in the eye, say, yes, sir, say, yes, ma'am. And so I just remember that talk of, we're on our way to Louisiana. You can't talk and act the way you do up in Minnesota.
And you're 51, so you're young. This wasn't back in the 50s, man. We were talking about what?
No, this was in the 70s.
In the 70s,
late
right.
70s, early 80s.
You've been given this talk.
Yeah. And second, I remember a guidance counselor in high school, Fletcher Cooley, a Black man, talking to me about why it was so important for me to go to college and what that would mean and what my life as a Black man could be like if I did not choose college. And I remember him putting 4 folders from colleges with admissions applications. And he said, you're going to take this home, you're going to fill all these out, your parents are going to help you, and you're going to bring them back to me, and you're going to go to one of these colleges, as if my life depended on it. And then the last talk that I can remember was my freshman year at St. John's University in central Minnesota. And I went to a high school that was 80% Black. So I know in Minnesota, I went to the one predominantly Black high school in Minneapolis. Wow. But I went to a college, a university, where I was like one of 10 African Americans on campus my freshman year.
Wow.
So there were students from the Bahamas and Jamaica and countries on the continent of Africa, but there were only 10 African Americans on the campus my freshman year. And wow. And I wanted to transfer. I wanted to go. I applied to Hampton University. I was accepted, and I was going to transfer to Hampton, to a Black school. And I remember my dad said, look, if you go to Hampton, I'll support you. But what if God has you in that environment for a reason, to endure what you need to endure to be who you're supposed to be afterwards? He said, what if God has you there because it's going to help you live into your calling if you can endure it?
Wow, man, that's powerful.
Yes.
I can remember coming home in second grade. When we lived in Chicago, I went to Head Start kindergarten and first grade there. So my kindergarten class only had one white student. First grade, my teacher was Black and the class was all Black. And she affirmed that I was going to be the first Black president of the United States. And that was 1969. We moved to Madison. I'm in second grade in 1970. I'm one of two Black kids, me and Reggie Darnell. And I came home and Mom said she noticed that the lights were out in my eyes. And she asked, baby, what's wrong? And she said, I asked her, Mom, were we really slaves? So my Black teachers in Chicago, no one thought that was important to tell me that we were descendants of enslaved people. But an all-white school with maybe 15 Black kids in it, in a second grade class with only 2 Black kids, Mrs. Carls thought that it was important to teach us that Black people were slaves or had been slaves. And so Mom had to begin to have that talk with me. I was 6. So when I was making friends in class, and sometimes we try to get, I guess now we call it a play date. And I had one day set up with my friend John, and then it was canceled. Mom said, she tried to explain to me, sometimes you're friends with people at school, but sometimes their families don't understand. Again, this was 1970, so it was a different world. Now, John and I remained friends for years. His mom supports our ministry. I eulogized his father, who was a doctor. So we stayed friends, but my mom was trying to protect my heart. And now looking back, she was trying to help me to understand that John may be your friend at school, but John's parents and folks may not be down with this sort of, Brian song relationship you got. We ended up being, John and I are still in communication with each other, not so frequently. It's been a few years, but I can remember trying to wrap my brain around that discussion. How about dating? Did you all get, you all are Straplin brothers. Did you get a talk from someone that you better not go off and date one of them? And one of them, for my listeners, is Karen. It's a white woman. We were told you better not. And it wasn't because, ooh, white people are nasty. Ooh, you're going to catch something. There were usually some drunk uncles that would say stuff like that. But it was really for safety, because if you get busy, her daddy finds out, you're going to get called. You're going to go to jail for rape. That's what's going to happen to you. So I remember hearing that kind of stuff. And I'm just curious, was that just because I lived in a predominantly white community? Did either of you get to talk about you better not date cross-culturally?
Yeah, my mother will deny this, because we every holiday when I'm with my mom and dad, I share this story, and my mom says, I did not say that. I did not say that. So, because I'll say, Mom, you used to say, if she can't use my comb, don't bring her home. She said, I did not say that.
I sent them my security agreement. She said it.
And my mom says, I did not say that. But here's a story that my mother will not deny. She will not. And again, I do believe this was about safety, because and let me put this in context real briefly. I went to a predominantly Black high school, as I mentioned.
Right.
But my junior year, we had an exchange program with a high school maybe 10, 12 miles away from us that was just as white as we were Black, Edison High School. And so a young white girl who we'll call Karen started attending our high school, and we had some classes together. And so my best friend, who's related to my wife, so Danisha and I weren't dating at the time. I hadn't even met Danisha yet. He invited me and some friends to his 16th birthday party. He and Danisha had their birthday party together because they were both turning 16 around the same time. So my friend has a girl he's bringing. So I decide to ask Karen to go to this party with me. And so me and my friend, we could double date. So he picks up his girlfriend, he picks me up. And now I've been talking to Karen on the phone, and her dad would answer the phone and say, "Oh, Karen's told me so much about you, Efrem. You sound like such a good young man, nice young man, blah, blah, blah." So I go, we go to her house to pick her up. I go to the front door, ring the doorbell. Her dad answers the door and looks at me with a look like you would have thought I was dressed as a burglar to break in his house or something. And he calls Karen, and she comes down. We go to the party, and the next week I don't see her at school anymore.
Wow.
So that was my first interracial dating experience.
I bet the Karens liked you, didn't they, Efrem? You just all gregarious and everything. I bet.
Karens didn't hate me. So I had that experience, and my mom knew that. And so I think my mom didn't want me to have that experience again.
Right.
So, so I started dating another Kareness young lady. And I remember she bought me a sweater for my birthday.
Okay.
No, for Christmas.
Sure.
Wrapped it. I brought it home. And so my mom said, "Did that girl give you that sweater?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Give me that sweater." She took it. She put it in another box, rewrapped it, put a bow on it, and put a little Christmas thing, where it says "to and from," and it said no. She wrote "no, thank you," and told me, and I had to take it and give it back to the girl.
Wait, does your mother deny that story too?
No, she does not deny that story.
Wow. But Efrem, right. They were trying to protect us because her father, that first Karen's father, looked at you funny, but your parents were old enough to know stuff happened to people.
Yeah, because they lived. I'm the first generation.
Alabama, Louisiana, come on.
Yeah, I'm the first generation in my family on the other side of Jim Crow. So I know they're thinking about this.
Of course.
I didn't know it at the time. I know now. So what's funny is a year later, I'm dating Danisha, who's my wife. Danisha buys me a Christmas gift. And you know what my mom says? "That is so nice. I like that girl." My dad said, "That girl's a keeper."
Got you.
Wow.
Now, can I now say this is not, because Adam needs to give his take on this.
Sure, we're good.
But do you understand? I'm saying this now in the context that my oldest daughter is engaged to be married. She's getting married this summer, and she's engaged to a white police officer.
Ooh.
All right now.
But you didn't ask me that. So I'm going to let Adam talk now.
After Adam go, we're going to come back. See, that's what you get for teaching multi-ethnicity. That's what you get for teaching we're coming back to that one, Adam. Believe you me.
Dr. G, I think we need to change the topic of the whole podcast, and let's just talk about your daughter's upcoming wedding. I think that should be the whole conversation.
Yes.
No, I'm half joking, but yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area, so think Berkeley, think late 60s, early 70s. I was not told that I shouldn't date anybody, and I was taught to treat everybody the same and expect people to treat you the same, and get indignant if they don't. The first time I really encountered this idea of not dating outside of your race was I became part of a little Baptist church because I liked the way the guy taught the Bible. I was really into that as a teenager, and I was the only Black person there, which wasn't that strange to me because I'd been in settings like that before, but to them it was very strange. And later on, the pastor actually taught that it was a sin to date outside of your race. And I was shocked. He taught it at a camp where I had convinced my friends, my cousins, everybody to come to camp because I heard, people give their lives to Jesus at camp, right? So I used all kinds of relational equity to get folks to come to camp. And then he was teaching this madness. Now, I went through the Bible and looked at every verse he was referring to and cross-referenced them with a whole bunch of other ones. And I basically argued with him at 16, showing that his interpretation of scripture was whacked. And people looked at me like I had two heads. But so I grew up thinking very differently from my family, but then I started to encounter other people who had these ideas. And in college, I dated widely from, all different cultures, from Japanese to Persian to all kinds of different European descent and African descent and everything else. But I remember the first time my mother saw a picture of a girl that I had met in college who was blonde and blue-eyed, and Mom was like, "Who is this?" I said, "Oh, she's a friend." Now, I wasn't actually dating this girl. She really was a friend. She was just a friend who gave me a picture of herself. She's a friend. What kind of friend?
She was sweet on you.
So, Mom got upset about that. But later on, my mother actually said, "I just need to be clear. You can date whoever you want. And my only hope is that you marry somebody who you love and who loves you." I later, though, did come to a conclusion that common culture was important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a pastor of a multicultural church and have had to sit down with parents, in some cases like Asian parents who their daughter is marrying a Black guy at the church. And I'm explaining, I know this man, I can vouch for his character, your daughter's safe kind of conversations.
Right.
All kinds of conversations like that I've presided over. Probably the most interesting was a Jewish American, Caucasian Jewish American young lady who was marrying a Indian immigrant to the US who was formerly Hindu. And so the wedding had all of these mixed traditions. But I found that common culture was important to me as I approached marriage. And so my wife, Grace, and I have very similar cultural experiences. As she's African American too. And so, yeah, that became an important thing to me, but my family never made that an issue.
Man, no, this is interesting. Efrem, your daughter's marrying a white police officer. Did you do like a Martin Lawrence, Will Smith kind of, Bad Boys? Like, who was your Martin Lawrence when that young man came to the house and I'm not saying she shouldn't do that, but I'm just saying I'm not shocked that often, but I'm just shocked right now for just a little bit, just in light of everything that's happening in the world. And you are from Minnesota. I mean, I hope we can squeeze that in. Like, you used to shop at the store where George Floyd, like right in front of, where George Floyd was.
Oh, the same store George Floyd went in. Well,
Right.
Put it this way. I grew up on the block where George Floyd was murdered. So let me start there.
All of that, when he came over for the first time, man, did you have to swell up? Were you just cool or just? I'm just curious about that first time meeting.
Yeah. Well, so here's the deal. So,
and we'll keep it general because I don't want your daughter getting mad at me. Your mama's already gonna listen.
I'm gonna have to say some things to clean that up because my mama's gonna hear this episode and go, "You put that out there on me, boy. Wait till I see you in July. Wait till I see."
She's gonna say, "Wait till I see you." In July.
I'm like, and I'm gonna say, "Mama, I'm 51 years old. Yeah, just wait.
Yeah, just wait."
I got something for you.
I got something for you, baby.
So I just want to say for the record, my mama loves all races and ethnicities and cultures, and she's a global woman, and I love her so much, and I know her seat in heaven is in the VIP section. Okay, so let me get to this thing.
In the Black VIP section, all right?
Yes.
In the Black
yes. There you will hear Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye and in the OJs, in the section of heaven where my mama will be.
That's right, with a nice lap handkerchief. So you're saying we're meeting this police officer for the first time?
So
I'm just intrigued. I want
to, and Josiah was he was not a police officer when I first met him. Because they started dating their senior year in college.
Sure.
And so, but I knew he was thinking about that. I mean, I knew that based on his major, there was a great chance he would become a police officer. So the first time he came, like the first time I met him, I was like, hey man, let's go hang out. And so I didn't tell him. I said, hey, let's go to lunch. And when we got to lunch, Bob Ballion, who's the guy I co-pastor with, who's Armenian, and Chief Hahn, Daniel Hahn is the police chief of Sacramento. He's the first African-American police chief. He was there. I didn't tell Josiah that he was going to be at the lunch. Jay King, who's he started the group Club Nouveau.
Oh yeah.
And so, and now is a part of the California Black Chamber of Commerce. He was there. And then I had the former mayor of Berkeley, who was close friends with Malcolm X. So Adam, I think you know who I'm talking about, this brother. And I didn't even know he was going to be there. Jay King just brought him. So that was just extra. So Josiah and I come into this restaurant, and they're sitting at a table in the corner. And I say, hey, I want you to meet these three guys. And I introduced them. I didn't know who the former mayor of Berkeley was. He was just sitting there. And so I say, this is actually who we're sitting with for lunch. So that was my future son-in-law. That was his first experience with me going, hey, get in the car with me. Let's go grab some lunch. And then I took him to that.
Yeah, that's
nice.
That's the bad boys. That was your approach.
Yeah. I think my wife tried to scare him away. She made oxtail stew.
Chitlins?
We're like, we're going to get to him. We're going to see. It's some oxtail stew,
Big straw. He's like, y'all got any hot sauce? Y'all got any Louisiana sauce?
He ate that bowl of oxtail stew and said, oh, Miss Smith, can I have another bowl, please?
He never see somebody trained.
I was like, doggone it.
Nice.
Should have made chitlins.
Man, he should have made chitlins, yes.
So, hey, I told him at the engagement dinner, I said, you know what? If I'm honest, I tried not to like you, and you made it one of the most difficult efforts I've ever engaged in. And it's my honor knowing that you love God, that you love my daughter, and that you're committed to your cross-cultural, intercultural development, that it's going to be my honor to call you son. And that's what's so hard about what's going on in our nation is I have family members, I have friends that I know are striving to serve and protect the right way daily.
Exactly.
And they're caught up in a systemic dilemma.
Yes.
That you can give your best individual effort, but the system is so upside down. And we just know that law enforcement for Black people began on plantations.
Yes.
So law enforcement for Black people, the origin has always been to keep Black people in a place and to protect white people from Black people. Right.
It's never been to protect and serve us.
And I just don't think that there's enough widespread collective honesty. And so I can love my son-in-law. I can love Chief Hahn, who's a member of my church. I can genuinely love, shepherd, connect with police officers, and also know the origins and the systemic narrative that must be reformed and reimagined.
Definitely. My little brother is a Chicago police officer. And so I'm constantly reminded that there are great folks, messed up systems that's taking good folks and allowing some bad things to happen to them. It's also causing us to ask the question, what is attractive about a broken system to white officers? Like what attracts people to that in this current state?
Hi, this is Dan Groupie from Monona, Wisconsin. I listen to Black Like Me because it brings alive for me what it means to be a Black person living in Wisconsin and living in the United States through people's stories and lived experiences. And this show has helped me to understand my role as a white person in either allowing racial disparities and injustices to be perpetuated or to take a more active role in dismantling these systems. And I'm a Patreon supporter because I feel like it's critical to amplify this message and help bring more people to the fight.
Now in its 5th season, the award-winning Black Like Me podcast has a reach throughout the U.S. and in over 100 countries around the world. It is the work of a dedicated team of people here in Madison, Wisconsin, dedicated to changing the conversation surrounding race. When you sign up to support Black Like Me as a patron, you support the work they are doing and help create better quality content and a better society. By going to patreon.com/blacklikeMe and signing up at any of the levels offered, you are not only signing up to make a monthly donation, you are also joining a growing community of people interested in engaging the issue of race with a raw, unprecedented honesty. As a patron of the podcast, you have access to exclusive content like extended interviews, bonus rants, and video chats with Dr. G. You will also have a chance to join the conversation that other patrons are already having with Dr. G about race in America. To become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/blacklikeMe or see the link in our show notes. And for as little as $2, you can support these important conversations and the work that Dr. G is doing. Thank you in advance.
You know, I want to use this just to shift a little bit, brothers. Man, I got to have you all back because there's so much good stuff I want to talk about. I recently watched Judas and the Black Messiah. And for Black folks, it allows us to ask deep philosophical questions about what it means to be, what America means and what it means to be American and Black. And there seems to be this dichotomy that says you cannot be critical of America and its actions and still patriotic. And just watching that film and what happened to Mr. Brother Hampton at 21 years old, and I'm curious, as one, just your take on the film. Did you find anything about Fred Hampton's life that you didn't know? But have you found that in your work, it's difficult for you to be critical of American actions without having people think that somehow you're non-patriotic or anti-American?
You know, I'm critical of my family, and it's because the love is so deep. You know,
Exactly.
I've been to somewhere between 35 and 40 countries for various reasons, staying for various lengths of time, and you know, field of study is in part intercultural studies, so I can appreciate different cultures and how societies are structured. But I have a unique love for America as home, but also I believe in this social experiment that we have going here, that this approach to a democratic republic. I see the uniqueness of it. As a kid, I was part of Boys State and Boys Nation. You can kind of Google that. It's a put on by the American Legion to educate high school juniors on American politics and structure. So I was in the White House, in the Rose Garden, being briefed by George Bush Sr. with just 90 something other high school kids, briefed by the Pentagon, the Supreme Court, and led around DC by the aid of a congressman. So I have a deep love for America, a deep appreciation and understanding of our political system and our history, but I'm also very critical of the flaws of this country. And I think there is no conflict between that criticism and patriotism. And it's that kind of attitude of my country, right or wrong, that keeps the country wrong. So I wouldn't take that attitude toward anyone or anything that I love.
Got you.
Yeah. Man, so many thoughts running through me about what you're saying. But one, starting off with Judas and the Black Messiah, you know, I first engaged the life of Fred Hampton in college in the basement of a library watching episodes of Eyes on the Prize over and over again. And again, I'm watching this being one of 10 African Americans on a predominantly white college campus. And
that's why you were in the basement.
You know, and it was right. And it was from watching that I gathered the few Black students we had and some students from Africa and the Bahamas, and we formed a Black Student Union.
Wow, really?
And I was the first president of it. And so, but the first thing that comes to my mind is how young the martyrs of the civil rights movement were.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
the martyrs, the majority of the martyrs were so young that it made 30-some-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. seem old.
Right.
You would have thought Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in his 60s.
Right.
But he was in his 30s.
Yes.
And so you think of Emmett Till, golly.
Yes.
The girls bombed in a church in Birmingham. I mean, babies died for Black equality.
Yes.
And yet somebody wants to ask me, am I pro-life? Get out of here.
Yeah.
Come on,
I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life when Black girls are in a Sunday school class.
Wow.
I'm pro-life when a Black boy leaves Chicago and goes to Mississippi to visit his relatives. That's why my parents gave me the talk going to Louisiana. They didn't want me to be Emmett Till.
Because that was real to them. Emmett Till was real.
That's why my mom and dad said, don't look a white woman in the eye in Louisiana. So I'm sorry, Adam, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was struck also by what you're saying, Efrem, about how young these brothers were. And when you see the power of a Fred Hampton, the wisdom that he had at that age, and the courage that he had, the love that he had for his people. You know, he's a young hero, but what struck me also was how much this powerful country feared that young Black man. That the level of fear and paranoia in America, that they would level all of the power of the FBI to stop some teenagers and young 20-somethings because they see the strength that they had. So it's devastating to reflect on it.
And to not use the resources of the federal government to take disenfranchised Black folks of color, and help to resource and open doors for them to bring that ingenuity and that brilliance into something that could have changed America in so many other ways, was so short-sighted. So instead, the federal government, the country, was threatened by the brilliance of being able to organize even non-Blacks to work together for justice. But if the government had just used some wisdom to find out, how do we make these folks a part of our team? How do we make this America for everyone? This country would have advanced so much more than it has. But he was a threat because they saw that he could amass a team of folks who didn't just look like him. It's sort of a threat that King made. And we know this because we've led cross-cultural organizations. When people find out that we as Black men, as Black leaders, Black influencers can influence those who aren't Black, that does become a threat to people because we're not then the typical Black leader that people envision. We can bring various groups together, and that becomes a threat to the power structure.
Yeah, if Fred Hampton was alive today, this radical brother would be building bridges with some of those folks that attempted an insurrection in the Capitol building.
Sure he would.
He found a way to expose systems of power bifurcating poor, vulnerable, marginalized, suffering people, whether they're Black people in the ghettos of Chicago or white people in the backwoods of West Virginia.
Right. He did it.
He figured that out. He figured out that there was a system of power that was always poisoning democracy. And that's why we have to be critical of America, because it's put on paper such high ideals.
Right.
It'd be one thing if America was a dictatorship. It'd be one thing if we didn't have a vote, but because we have a vote, because we live in a free market enterprise, because the ideals raise such a high bar, we must be critical of America so that that high bar can actually be grabbed by all people.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, and one of the ideals of America is that internal criticism. We have a freedom of speech for a reason. The country was started as an insurrection. It was started as a rebellion against tyranny. So, and even when you look back at what they considered tyranny then, truth is King George was all right compared to some of the stuff we're seeing now. So it's very much a patriotic act to critique the system and seek to improve it.
Mm. You know, we don't have enough time to go into this fully, but I still want to tease it out. You know, these Black martyrs were pegged as socialists, communists, and so they were painted as a threat to American democracy, when in fact they were trying to really call it out so that America could understand its ills and come to terms with it and fix those things. I'm finding now that I'm having to justify that I'm not a Marxist, because I'm talking about equality, and white folks are wondering, am I trying to do a Robin Hood? Am I trying to say, well, you got to give up your money to the Black poor and the Black disenfranchised? And so, do you all feel that we as Black influencers today, and we happen to have a foot in as social influencers, but also as faith leaders, do you feel that our reputations occasionally are being targeted the way Hampton's was, the way Malcolm's was, the way King's was, that somehow we were detrimental to America's democracy, that we were trying to destroy it, and so we're being pegged as angry or things that make it difficult for us to continue to have credibility in our communities? Do you think that old soup has been warmed up again, and they're using it against folks in our generation?
Yeah, there seems to be, the assassination physically of movement leaders has now moved to a character assassination, an assassination upon humanity. Now that was going on too. I mean, before King was physically assassinated, the government was tapping phones, and as we saw in Judas and the Black Messiah, actually threatening Black men with, incarceration if they didn't go undercover and help the government infiltrate these groups.
Right.
But today it's an assassination upon the humanity and the intellect. I mean,
come on.
Okay, because we're keeping it real.
We're keeping it all the way.
I'm still deeply perplexed that there are some people that think Donald J. Trump carried the same level of intellectual weight as Barack Obama. I'm just confused. I'm not saying Donald Trump is a stupid human being. I mean, in his lane, I guess he's done some incredible things. There's a number of buildings and resorts that got his name on it, a number of ties that got his name on the back.
Couple of golf courses.
Right. But I remember when Barack Obama was president, and I would sit in diners and hear some white people talk about how stupid and ignorant he was. I'm like, this dude graduated from Harvard.
Come on.
I mean, they said
head of the Harvard Law Review. Come on.
Right. I heard people quietly say, he's just not a smart man. He's just, oh, I wish we didn't have this dumb president. Like, that was things I heard. But then I heard people talk about how bright and intellectual. And again, this is a long-term narrative in the nation of, whether it's the movie Hidden Figures, when these Black women, how smart they were, but they had to live beneath their intellect. They had to live beneath their power. And so I think that's the assassination now. It's
definitely
either assimilate or we will assassinate your being.
Wow. I'm just writing this down. Um, one of the things that I wrote an article about 7 years ago about how Madison, Wisconsin is failing its Black community, and the newspaper named it Justified Anger. I didn't. That was the title they took. But that moniker of being an angry Black man marginalized me in a way that some male leaders might say, well, she's too emotional to lead a big company because she's going to get in her feelings and she's not going to make good, clear decisions. That terminology is a slight way of discrediting people, character assassination. You take a Black person and you stop calling them articulate or they have charisma, je ne sais quoi, they can lead people, they can speak well, and you start calling them angry, that marginalizes them. It means you cannot take them seriously, and then they become a threat. And I found myself explaining why I was angry more so than the things that made me angry. They wanted me to change the name of my movement from Justified Anger to Justified Action, because anger just seemed to perplex white people and power. And I guess they just wanted me to do a little soft shoe or shuffle and just smile, because even they knew the treatment of Black people was unconscionable. So they needed us to smile so that they could justify it in their minds. And I find that piece still happens too, that if we don't smile and don't laugh, we become a real threat. Adam, you're going to jump in earlier as Efrem was talking about what the character assassination looks like, or how we're accused of being non-American, practicing CRT, critical race theory. We're critical race theorists, or we're Marxists. We're going to weigh in on some of that, Adam.
Yeah, well, I think first thing I'll say is I personally haven't experienced anything on the level of what people like Dr. King or Fred Hampton experienced, but I have experienced people trying to discredit what we're saying when we critique the system.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a boogeyman. It was communism or Marxism. And even when Dr. King wrote an article on why he as a Christian could not be a communist, people still called him a communist. Even when Barack Obama, his religion is irrelevant to him being a president. But even when Barack Obama gives a testimony of how he walked down an aisle and became a Christian, people insist that he's a Muslim because Muslims are the latest boogeyman, and we've got to label him as somehow a danger. And so there's always there has always been, and there is currently, some new label to try to discredit the critique that any of us bring. But I think underneath it all is fear. And you mentioned the term anger or angry Black man. From the Civil War on, at least, there is this fear in white society of Black retaliation.
Yes.
When you've done someone wrong, there is a thought in the back of your mind, what if they actually gave us what we deserve? And I think underneath that awareness of the atrocities is this fear. And so we find ourselves, in so many settings, trying to make white people comfortable, right, trying to diffuse that sense of threat. And you listen to right-wing radio or television, and these angry shock jocks on the other side are applauded for their anger and their outrage at someone challenging America and so forth, or when they storm the Capitol and bludgeon people to death with an American flag, there's all kinds of explanation about how these were really just good patriots. So I just don't give much credence to the labels and the whatever their latest boogeyman is. We just have to speak truth.
Definitely, man. I'm enjoying this. Hey, Dr. Smith, I know you've got to go. Okay, you can stay for 5 minutes more. I'm going to try to wrap up right after that. So I want to just ask you all, first of all, this has been so refreshing, because we usually bump into each other in passing at conferences, but to be able to connect and just talk about things the way we are is really helpful. Are you fearful for your daughters as Black women in America today? And we can answer that one quickly. I got one last question.
Well, the answer, I mean, the
Or
straight answer is,
how fearful, how concerned are you?
yeah, the straight
Raising
answer
Black
is,
women in America.
the straight answer is yes. I,
Sure.
I'll be provocative here at the beginning of the answer, like I haven't been already. But
Right.
Chris Rock said that you've done a good job as a father of daughters if you just keep them off glass slippers and the pole. That's what he said. Now,
Sounds
let
like
me
Chris Rock.
let me come behind that and say his joke became a serious reflection for me to this degree. Not just my concern about how my daughters would be treated as Black women in a world that still lifts up the Greco-Roman woman as the epitome of beauty, the Western white woman as the epitome of beauty, how they would be treated in that. I mean, they had to pass a federal law so that Black women could go to work with their natural hair, the
Right.
Crown Act.
Right.
Like that just passed, like I think in the last year or two, I think.
And in the military in the last 10 or 15 years.
So I'm going, wait, so women can now legally go to work with their natural hair without their boss being able to say to them, hey, to keep your job, I really need you to get a hot comb or get a relaxer. Right. I need you to come looking like Karen tomorrow to keep this job. But the other thing in the seriousness off of the jest of Chris Rock was my fear that my daughters would just be gawked at by society. Mm-hmm. They would just be objectified. They would just be judged by their physical features and not appreciated for the fullness, the holistic way in which they are made in the image of God. And so,
yes.
So definitely that's an ongoing concern, but it's why I spend so much time trying to speak empowerment and life and achievement into my daughters' lives. And it's why I'm proud of who they've become.
And that's beautiful. That's really powerful. Efrem, let me ask you one more question, because I know you got to slip out. And then Adam, if you just got about a few more minutes, I'll ask you the same things, because I know Efrem might have to slip out quietly. What's next for America? Like the theme for my season 5 episode is now what? Because people assume because Kamala Harris is the vice president, Biden is not Trump, that we've made it, we've arrived, we have overcome. But we both know that we can't rest on our laurels. And so just whatever your parting 30-second thoughts are about how do we maintain the positive momentum that can come out of what we have witnessed in 2020, shootings, killings, the balance of COVID-19 on Black folks. There's an awareness right now. People are trying to figure out how do we continue this. So if you can say that before you slip off, and then Adam, I'm going to ask you the question about raising a daughter and about what we do next. But just any parting thoughts, Dr. Smith, about what we do in America to maintain this positive momentum, if we have positive momentum right now?
I think it's always been and continues to need to be a grassroots effort.
Okay.
I mean, the ending of slavery, can you point to Abraham Lincoln? Sure. But you had to point to resistance on plantations.
Come on now. Yes.
I mean, the civil rights movement, can you point to Lyndon B. Johnson and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act? Yes. But you really got to point to nonviolent resistance on the ground.
Exactly.
And I think that's still the case. That I'm not saying don't focus on the presidency, but man, we got to focus on who's on the school board. Who's the mayor? Who's the police chief? Who are the city commissioners?
Right.
We got to start infiltrating rooms like the Chamber of Commerce in our communities. We need a more multifaceted, multi-pronged approach. And I just go, it's grassroots. And so we can't be so focused on the highest office that we just look over the local offices, what's going on in our neighborhoods.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Listen, Dr. Smith, I know you got to slip out of here in just a moment, but just know I appreciate you, not only the great work that you do in your community and across this nation and the world, but also your mind. I appreciate your brilliance your thought about these issues, and you're willing to still be at the table, particularly around issues of multi-ethnicity, multiculturalism, knowing that that's probably some of the places of deepest pain. I appreciate the fact that you're living out what it means to be a true bridge builder, and means a lot to me. I'm really honored that you were here on our podcast today.
Well, no, I appreciate it. Have so much honor and respect for you. And the show's going to end right because you're ending with Adam. So the fact that Adam's going to have the last words, it's going to ensure that it's going to end at a high level.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you. Hey, Mr. Edgerly, anything you want to add about what it's like raising, a Black daughter in America, and then also just your take on what's next in order to maintain positive momentum culturally or in terms of inclusion?
When I think about my daughter, my first thought is that the world is blessed to have her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so proud of who she's becoming. She's 15 now, brilliant.
Yes.
She's very aware, very politically aware and conscious. And so we have to balance these things of saying, okay, you need to know that there are these difficulties in the world, but at the same time, don't allow that to get in your head to the point where you think it limits what you're able to achieve in life. And so one of my fears is that people might underestimate her, and that she would not speak up for herself in those settings. And so we've made that a part of our goal is just to coach her on advocacy, and she's good at it. She's great at it, in fact. But I remember one time, my daughter is just one of these people that has always gotten straight A's. I don't know what that's like, but that's the kind of person I'm raising. And so one time there was a teacher who gave us a progress report that just said she's doing fine, but it didn't say whether she was on track for honors or not, and it didn't give any other detail. So I realized, wait a minute, this person thinks fine is passing, I guess. And so I actually called a meeting with that teacher, and I said, tell me what you see. How's our daughter doing, et cetera. And I needed him to know, we need to know what do we need to do to support her as parents, where she's strong, where she's struggling, we need a detailed information, because we're dealing with somebody who has an internal motivation to excel. And so your job as a teacher is to support that internal motivation. And if you overlook that because of the color of her skin or whatever your issue might be, she's not going to perform at her best. After that meeting, we always got detailed feedback, but more importantly, my daughter got detailed feedback that helped her to achieve what she wanted to achieve in that class, which was honors, right? Yeah. And it was a science class. But so that's one of my concerns. But I really think that she's equipped for whatever life is throwing at her, and that's my goal. We really have to balance letting our kids know the world is tough, but also letting them know that cannot stop you.
Right, man. That's a powerful 1-2 punch. How about what's next for America? Now, America's better because we have Harper Edgerly in it, who's going to help make our presence known. But any closing thoughts about what America's got to do to maintain its positive momentum? You live in this space of intercultural, multicultural relationships. Any parting words of wisdom that, particularly for our non-Black listeners who are trying to figure out what can I do, what can I say, where can I go? That's the majority of the audience that's listening to this. What would you like for them to know or hear from you? Some pearls of wisdom of how we maintain positive momentum in as much as we have it.
There are stages of grief, right? And one of them is anger and bargaining and acceptance ultimately. And I think part of the challenge for American society is to see the world for what it is. Mm-hmm. This globalization happened and is continuing to happen. The interconnectedness of world economies, it is what it is. You can't turn back the clock on that. And even if you shut down the US border right now, the birth trends means that by the time we get to the 2040s, there is no white majority in the United States anymore. Right. That horse is out of the gate. So people really need to look at the world for what it is and say, you know, how do we have the best, most prosperous and peaceful world moving forward? And it means getting to know and appreciate and get along with your neighbor who doesn't look like you and has a different culture than you do. And the more you double down on trying to maintain minority control, and by minority, I mean white minority control of America because of some illusion of the past, the more things are going to heat up because people aren't going to stand for that. And I see that's what's going on. When you look at the voter suppression laws that are being crafted, you have people going into rooms strategizing on how to disenfranchise people to maintain power. I'm telling you, that is a losing battle. It is a losing battle. And the longer you hold on to that strategy of trying to disenfranchise people out of fear, the more tensions will rise. We can come together and make life better for everyone, but it requires getting past those early grief stages to the stage of acceptance that just this unilateral white hegemony is over.
That's some powerful insight. So getting to know your neighbor, getting out of your comfort zone, beginning to work together, because this train, this horse, you said, has left the station. And the other thing, just thinking about, Adam, is white men are struggling right now because for the first time in American history, they're being questioned or despised or disliked or looked at sideways, as we might say in the Black community, because of their gender and their ethnicity. Black men know what it's like. We have 400 years of experience of being judged, feared, hated because we were Black and male. If white men humble themselves, we could teach them how to navigate what it means to still have self-respect when people are questioning you or your worth or your motives just because you're white and male. Our parents gave us the talk so that we could still know that we're not 3/5 of a person. We're just as good as anyone else. We're made in the image and the likeness of God. We have experience doing that. I think we're coming to a world, I mean, we're moving into a space within this world that white people would be really smart, wise, to sit at the feet of Black and brown leaders because we know how to thread the needle on this. We know how to navigate this craziness of this world and maintaining our sanity, a sense of faith, and a strong sense of identity without destroying other cultures to do so. And so whether that's white evangelicalism, whether it's white leaders, rather than fighting us, they need to really have us instruct them by giving another perspective, but showing how we have maintained culture. We still know what it means to get syllable spankings. We still have these codes that have not been broken for 400 years because someone taught us how to navigate American soil by being Black. And I think white people need to understand this as they shift to becoming the true minority. They're going to lose their everlasting minds if they don't have the tutelage of folks like us. Do you think that that's a fair statement? I know it's probably overly generalized, but is there any truth in the fact that people need to understand we know a lot about, we have a broader worldview than just how to navigate the inner cities. We know how to navigate other isms. And I think people need to sit at the feet of Black leaders and learn that.
I totally see the truth in what you're saying, and it's nuanced. There are a lot of levels to the truth of what you're saying and the skills that we've had to develop as a people. But I'll zero in on just one of them. I think one of them is maintaining an internal sense of identity, regardless of what other people think of you. And so we have not had the luxury of having external affirmation. So we had to maintain a sense of internal identity and worth, and not find it necessary to demean anyone else in order to maintain our own sense of self-worth and to enter a room and bring who you are into a conversation without having the external affirmation of everybody else in the room. And so eventually people come around and they come to see who we are, but we had to have that internal fortitude. And I think that that's something that white males in particular in our society who may feel like everybody's looking down on me, everybody's judging me, that sense of personal identity can calm you down and can allow you to demonstrate who you are to people who may be suspicious without needing them to affirm you on the front end.
That's some powerful stuff. Exactly. That's where our faith and our spirituality grew, and our sense of community. The fact that you can walk into a space you've never been before and see someone who looks like you and make eye contact with them and speak, that sense of connection, that sense of being grounded inwardly, spiritually, emotionally, on so many levels, allowed me to see that humanity in someone else. So I just remember growing up in Madison, and my white friends asking, "Do you know him? Do you know him?" I said, "No," but you nodded at him, you spoke. Because I see him, I want him to understand we connect, and we're affirming each other's humanity that our mamas and dads and grandmamas and siblings put into us. And others need to understand that centeredness, because that has allowed us to not be destroyed. Man.
Yes. There's something else I want to mention about that, Dr. G. There was a rally here called a White Lives Matter rally, and I don't know a lot about the movement, but the reporting on it is essentially it's a white supremacist movement that is using that name to mock Black Lives Matter.
Yes, of course.
So, but I think it raises a great question. Some people see a parallel there. So they see, well, if we say White Lives Matter, or we are trying to protect white culture, it's the same as Black Lives Matter. But the slogan Black Lives Matter is fighting for the right to exist, the right to live. It isn't trying to take anything away from anyone else. It isn't saying that we're better than anyone else, and it isn't trying to be superior to anyone else. And so there is a difference when people who have maintained a societal control, a society that was designed to give them a particular privilege, in which, I don't even have time to try to justify that assertion, but the society is built that way, right? When people cling to that position of privilege along racial lines, that is a very different thing. That is not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. And it is because of the proliferation of whiteness that other groups have to say our lives matter, because, James Baldwin said in a quote, and I'm paraphrasing and hopefully not to the detriment of his intent, but he said, white folks in America, to the extent that you don't understand the plight of the Negro, you don't understand yourselves, because to be white in America is to have benefited from someone standing on the necks of Black Americans, to exploit Black people, to make this country a world power, and then categorically and systematically excluding them from eating in the fields that they plowed. And so you need to understand Black folks in order to understand who you are and why you are. And so for white folks to not even understand that whiteness is not an ethnicity, but a social construct for the proliferation of white supremacy, shows how far folks are from the group. Like, if someone wants to celebrate being Irish or German, go for it. Invite me to the cultural festival. I want to eat and celebrate with you.
Absolutely.
Celebrate a social construct as an ethnicity. And the fact that you don't even know that it's not an ethnicity proves how this is so systemic that it's just handed off to the next generation.
Yes.
Black and white is the same in America.
That's one of the casualties, actually, of how America was built, was that Irishness or Germanness or Polishness was destroyed in favor of creating the social construct of whiteness. So we all have something to gain by being better students of our history. And in fairness to everybody in America, our education system did not fail. It achieved what it was designed to achieve.
Exactly.
So it was
working.
designed to suppress this knowledge. It's designed to give an illusion of what America is. And so if you don't understand these things and they sound bizarre to you, in one sense, I don't blame you for not knowing on the front end, but there comes a point where you got to take responsibility for your own education.
You sure do.
And so find out the truth about how America was and is designed. And that gives us the ability to help craft it into what we all long for it to be. I like I said on the front end, I'm a lover of this country, but I also recognize all the changes that need to happen in order for us to live out our ideals.
Definitely. Definitely. Man, listen, folks, I told you that you are in for a treat. My special guests today have been Dr. Efrem Smith and Reverend Adam Edgerly. And I'm just talking to these brothers as fellow dads of daughters, thought leaders, community activists, consultants, and folks who have spent our careers as Black men trying to bring people together. And we're beginning to see on our watch a sense of wokeness among non-Black folks, which I call revelation. In our line of work, we call it revelation. And something's happening where people are beginning to really take a look at the world and these systemic realities much differently. And so I want you to listen to this. I want you to share this. I want you to post it, and I want you to comment on it, folks, because these are the kinds of rich conversations that you don't get to be a part of very often. And even though I'm Black and male and these are my friends, I'm not engaged in this as often as I need to be. I'm often defending these truths. It's so great to be talking with colleagues where these truths are being affirmed. So please, as always, lean in, listen, subscribe, share, click that Patreon button and find out how you can become a supporter of this podcast so that we can continue to have this listened to in over 100 countries around the world, in every state of the union. Someone you know needs to be a part of the Black Like Me family. And so help us get this out to them. Hey, Adam, man, this was a treat having you on this podcast. And I hope that this is not the last time that we can just talk about life, fatherhood, leadership. And congratulations in your new role. And I'm looking forward to interacting with you offline about that work and seeing how we can partner together. But your presence has meant a lot to me. And like I said to Efrem, and I mean this sincerely, I appreciate your commitment, your love for our culture, your commitment to bridge building, but also the brilliance that you bring into the marketplace and how you stand firm and square-shouldered, as Black folks used to say, and speak truth. And you've been doing this for a minute in predominantly non-white spaces. And brothers and sisters, folks like you really inspire me. So, man, I appreciate you and respect your work and your presence in our community.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, man, even when it's a whole bunch of people eavesdropping on the conversation. So thank you for creating this platform and for the invitation, man. I really enjoyed it.
Black Like Me. Black like.
This has been another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Special shout out to Eli and to Jeremy, who are my engineers and my editors on this, to Don Thornton, who is my podcast manager, who makes sure that we line all of this up, to Corey Saffold, who is responsible for that exciting new jingle, that Black Like Me jingle. I'm so excited about that. And to vocals by Marcus Fleming.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.
Black like me.
Hey, Eli.